Have you ever felt like someone fell in love with you, and even you couldn't explain why? Or maybe you felt such a powerful connection with someone that it seemed to come from another life, as if it had existed long before you even met. That's the thing. Love isn't just chemistry, and it's definitely not random. There's something much deeper happening behind what we can see. Carl Jung, one of the greatest psychologists of the last century, believed no one falls in love by accident. Every time, someone feels drawn to you with intensity, desire, or enchantment. It's not about your smile or the way you speak. It's about what you represent in that person's emotional world. And in this video, we're going to explore exactly that. What truly makes someone fall in love with you, and why love often has more to do with what's inside them than anything on the outside of you. If you've ever loved someone and couldn't understand why it hurt so deeply, if you've ever been in a connection that started like magic but ended in confusion, or if you simply want to understand what lies beneath the kind of love that touches your soul, stay with me, because today you might realize that no one enters your life by chance, and that even the strangest kind of love had a perfect place to happen. Inside of you, there's a kind of attraction that logic just can't explain. It's not about looks, charm, or charisma. It's a force that moves through time, space, and reason. A connection that arrives before words even have a chance to form. And when it does, it's like the world stops. Not because the other person is perfect, but because they touched something inside you that had been asleep. Jung believed love isn't random. It doesn't come from nowhere. It follows an invisible order, a kind of intelligence that works quietly behind the scenes of the psyche. When two people meet and feel that instant pull, what's happening isn't just mutual attraction. It's one unconscious mind recognizing the other. The truth is, people don't fall in love with what you show. They fall in love with something you're not even aware you're expressing, something that goes beyond your words, actions, or appearance. It's a silent vibration, a living symbol you carry without realizing, and that awakens in the other a forgotten memory, a repressed desire, or a hidden path toward growth. Often, love feels like a reunion, like you've known this person from somewhere you can't quite name. It's not déjà vu, it's resonance. It's the unconscious whispering, this person represents something vital for your process. And even if you've never met before, your soul recognizes them, because the call isn't from the mind, it comes from the psyche. This isn't mystical fluff. Jung was a scientist of the soul, and he understood that there are forces inside us so ancient, so deep, they keep moving even when we're not aware of them. When someone feels intensely drawn to you out of nowhere, you can be sure something about your energy, your presence, or even your silence is mirroring something essential in their inner world. That's why some romantic connections feel like they just happen. But nothing in that meeting is accidental. What looks casual might actually be the exact moment when two unconscious stories cross paths, as if the other person was the symbolic answer to a question you didn't even know you were asking. And that changes everything, because it means love doesn't always start with the other. It starts within. It's your own psyche asking to evolve, to integrate, to heal, and using the presence of another person as the catalyst. That's why certain encounters shift our entire path. They didn't show up to fill a void. They came to wake something up. So the next time someone shows you a deep kind of love, or you feel that overwhelming passion for someone, remember, it's not just chemistry. It's symbolic language. It's your unconscious calling, and it only calls when you're ready to hear. But before we move on, let me ask you something, quietly, to yourself. Are you already subscribed to the channel? Because if you're not, maybe now is the time. Here, we don't talk about cliches or shortcuts. We talk about the soul, about real inner change, about the kind of insight that touches where ordinary words can't reach. And if this has resonated with you so far, it means there's a lot more waiting for you right here. So take a second, check if that button is still red, and click it. That way, you won't miss the moments that just might shift something inside you, often, exactly when you need it most. Now, here's the thing. Sometimes, what attracts people to you isn't you. It's what you awaken. That sense of magic someone feels around you might have very little to do with your actual personality, and everything to do with the space you unknowingly fill in their psyche, a hidden, unspoken space that they themselves may have never faced. People don't fall in love with specific traits. They fall in love with meanings. You could be calm, intense, creative, logical. What truly matters isn't what you are, but what that represents emotionally to the person looking at you. You might become the living symbol of a courage they never claimed, a freedom they were denied, a tenderness they never received. Jung called this projection, when someone's unconscious isn't seeing you for who you are, but for what they need to reconnect with inside themselves. Take a simple example. Someone emotionally restrained their whole life might feel fascinated by your spontaneity, but it's not just admiration. It's a longing to reconnect with something they buried long ago. Projection is powerful because it turns you into a kind of portal. The person looks at you and feels like they're standing in front of something sacred, but what they're really facing is a part of themselves, made visible in your presence. That's why love born from this dynamic feels so intense. It carries the emotional weight of an old inner need finally being acknowledged. This also explains why some relationships carry an inexplicable sense of urgency, as if time is running out for feelings too big to contain. But in truth, emotional time isn't starting at that moment. It's simply surfacing. You become a trigger for unconscious memories, unlived dreams, and parts of the soul that have been locked away for years. And when that happens, you're not just a nice person. Without realizing it, you become a bridge. The other person walks across you in search of something that belongs to them, but they don't always see it that way. And that's where enchantment can quietly turn into need, attachment, even idealization. Because love that's born from absence, if not met with awareness, becomes dependence. This kind of love often comes with phrases like, "You complete me," or "I've never met anyone like you." They sound romantic, but they're dangerous, because what they really reveal is that the other person isn't seeing you. They're seeing a missing piece of their own inner puzzle, and no one should have to carry that weight. The risk is being loved for what you represent, not for who you truly are. That's why awareness is so powerful. When the other person realizes that what they admire in you is actually something they can, and should, awaken within themselves, the relationship changes. It steps out of fantasy and into reality. Admiration becomes inspiration, not a prison. Love stops being a need and starts becoming a choice. But what you symbolize for someone else isn't always something missing. Sometimes it's something they've carried inside for years, not as a void, but as an image, a silent inner figure that's been with them since their earliest days. And suddenly, when you walk into their life, that image seems to come alive. According to Carl Jung, we all carry an idealized image of the other deep within our unconscious, a kind of internal blueprint of what the masculine or feminine feels like to us. For men, this archetype is called the anima. For women, the animus. They're not about personal preferences or cultural beauty standards. They are emotional symbols formed by our earliest relationships, especially with parents, and shaped over time by myths, stories, and the collective beliefs we absorb from the world around us. These inner images are stored in the psyche like invisible scripts, And without knowing it, we spend our lives looking for someone who fits them. When that person shows up, even if only partially, the reaction is often overwhelming. We feel a deep, inexplicable connection, as if we've found something we weren't even aware we were looking for. That's why some passions feel heavy, as if they carry the weight of fate. You meet someone, exchange a few words, and suddenly, something inside you whispers, "It's them." It doesn't matter if it makes sense. It doesn't matter if you've just met. There's this feeling, ancient, familiar, like returning to a story that began long before this moment. But as magical as that sensation feels, it doesn't always reveal the truth about who the other person is. What's happening is this. Without realizing it, you've become the screen where that old image is being projected, and what they see in you may have less to do with reality and more to do with a dream they've carried in silence their whole life. The power of this kind of love is undeniable. It feels like it has a life of its own. It doesn't follow logic. It doesn't care about time. But precisely because it's so symbolic, it's also fragile. No one can sustain being someone else's projection forever. Fantasy demands perfection, and life doesn't offer that. Eventually, the real human being emerges, with contradictions, complexities, flaws. And slowly, the image begins to break. What once felt divine becomes confusing. What once felt eternal becomes uncertain. Love that once felt invincible starts to reveal its cracks, not because it was fake, but because it was built on an internal image, not a genuine exchange. Still, Jung didn't see this as failure. He saw it as part of the process. Even projections have a purpose. They show us what's alive inside ourselves. And when we recognize that, when we understand that the other person awakened something ancient that was already within us, we take a vital step. We step out of illusion and into consciousness. Oh, and before we go on, can I ask you a small favor that makes a big difference? If this video is resonating with you, hit the like button now. It's not about numbers. It's about helping this message reach someone who might be going through exactly what you've been through. It's like planting a seed of awareness on someone else's path. And here's the beautiful part. When you share something meaningful, the universe always finds a way to return that energy. So if it touched you, click like, and let's keep going together. And it's usually right here that love stories start to fall apart. Not because the feeling was fake, but because it was built on something unsustainable, an idealized image. When the other person begins to show who they truly are, with doubts, fears, and flaws, the fantasy begins to fade, and what once felt unshakable suddenly begins to shake. Projection isn't a villain. It's part of the process. But when love is based only on that, it becomes blind. You're not seeing the other person. You're seeing a reflection of what you want, need, or dream about. And that's a trap, because the person stops being themselves and starts acting out the role you've unknowingly assigned to them. But no one can live as a symbol forever. Fatigue sets in. Expectations become heavy. And slowly, disappointment starts to show, not because they did something wrong, but because they simply couldn't live up to what they never promised to be. That's when the old silent conflicts begin, the distant looks, the words that no longer fit. What once felt like everything in common turns into, "You've changed." But the truth is, no one changed. What ended was the illusion, and in its place, reality begins. That shift can hurt, because when we fall in love with a projection, we don't just mourn the end of a relationship. We grieve the death of a fantasy, the collapse of an inner story that once carried our hope, our longing, our idea of being whole. But there's value in that pain, because it's in that moment, when the illusion breaks, that we finally get the chance to see the other person for who they really are, not as a savior, not as an ideal, but simply as a human being. And when we allow that, we also begin to see ourselves more clearly. Who were we in this story? What were we searching for? Jung believed that every heartbreak is, in truth, an invitation to self-discovery. When the illusion collapses, what remains is truth. Truth, and with comes the opportunity to build something real. A connection where the other doesn't have to represent something to us, but can simply exist as they are. Recognizing this is liberating, because it frees us from chasing perfect love and prepares us to experience love that's real, with presence, with flaws, with depth. The kind of love that doesn't depend on enchantment, but grows through the daily choice to see and be seen fully. When the illusion fades and projection falls away, what often remains is silence, sometimes confusing, sometimes heavy. But that silence is fertile ground, where something new can begin, because every intense encounter, even those that end in pain, carries a deeper purpose, to reveal who you really are. Jung didn't see relationships as emotional coincidences. He saw them as meaningful meetings between unconscious parts. Every person who shows up in your life with intensity comes as a messenger. They're not here just to love or be loved. They arrive to stir you, to break you open, to make you look into places within yourself you might have long forgotten. That's why certain people touch us so deeply. They bring a mirror, and not just one that reflects our light. Often, they show us what we've denied, feared, or refused to feel. They reveal the parts of us that still need to be integrated. And that's why they unsettle us just as much as they enchant us. Some activate your strength, others, your insecurity. Some make you feel seen for the first time. Others leave you completely lost. But all of them, without exception, serve a purpose: to accelerate your individuation. That inner journey Jung described as the path to becoming whole. And that means even the loves that hurt, the ones that didn't last, the ones that ended in silence or conflict. They weren't mistakes. They served a function. They showed you what still needed to be healed, understood, transformed. Sometimes the soul needs to lose something, to access. It had forgot something. This kind of love doesn't fit into fairy tales. It's not the happily ever after kind. It's the love that wakes you up, that turns a key, that leaves a mark like an invisible tattoo. Not because it lasted, but because it revealed something that changed you forever. And it's natural that in the midst of the pain, you'd ask, why did this happen to me? But with time, the question changes. It becomes, what did this reveal about me? And that's where the real process begins. The other person is no longer the center of the story. You are. At the core, these difficult loves don't come to complete you. They come to free what was already within. They don't bring something new. They peel away the layers, hiding what was always yours. And as painful as that may be, it's in that encounter with your own soul that love becomes sacred. After so many stories, encounters, heartbreaks, and revelations, something shifts in the way you see love. It's no longer just a search. It becomes a mirror. What once was, who will love me, becomes, what is this person revealing about me right now? And that shift changes everything. Because every time you feel deep love for someone, or someone feels that for you, there's something stirring beneath the surface, something symbolic, emotional, unconscious, a new piece trying to fit into your process of growth. The secret isn't in the other person. It's in what awakens in you when they appear. That's why some connections feel life-changing. It doesn't matter how long they lasted. Sometimes, a bond that lasted days marks you more than a relationship that lasted years. Because it wasn't about time, it was about function. It came to turn a key, even if silently, even if painfully. And that's where the right question makes all the difference. Not, why did this happen to me? Not, why did they leave? But, what is being awakened in me right now? That's the question that transforms, because it shifts you from victim to author. It puts you at the center of your own emotional journey. To Jung, love isn't a prize. It's not a destination. It's a tool of individuation, a catalyst for becoming who you truly are. Each person who passes through your life carries a code, a message that speaks directly to forgotten parts of your soul. When you realize this, you stop chasing perfect relationships and start experiencing authentic ones. And here's the beautiful twist. When you stop waiting for someone to save you or complete you, love changes form. It becomes lighter, deeper, free, because it no longer comes from lack. It comes from presence, from choice, from the meeting of two people who don't need to walk together, but choose to. Love stops being urgency and becomes reflection. You look at the other person not as your answer, but as a space for revelation. And in that reflection, you begin to recognize the parts of yourself that were once asleep. Your open laughter, your courage, your patience, unhealed pain. All of it comes to the surface, not as a problem, but as an invitation. In the end, the deepest love is the one that gives you back to yourself. It doesn't trap you or blind you with illusions. It awakens what's most alive inside you. And maybe, just maybe, that is why someone falls in love with you, not because of what you offer, but because of what you reveal. If this message resonated with you, take it in gently. Rewatch if you need to. Sometimes, what we hear today will only make sense tomorrow, when life shows us why. And if you know someone who keeps asking themselves, why do I always fall for the wrong people? Or, why do my relationships always follow the same script? Send them this video, because for them, this reflection might be exactly the shift they've been needing. Oh, and remember, this isn't just about videos, it's about consciousness. So if you want to keep receiving content like this, subscribe, turn on the bell, leave a like, and tell me in the comments what part touched you the most. It helps keep this space alive. But more than that, it helps spread the kind of conversation the world needs right now. I'll see you in the next one. Until then, take care of your soul.